Open the door, step right inside. Come into this place where love and hope will abide. Reach out your hand, I'll welcome you in. It's so good to be together again. Start out the day wearing a grin. Joyful faces make the people want to come in. Open your arms to show that you care, and our little light will shine everywhere. Open the door, step right inside. Come into this place where love and hope will abide. Reach out your hand, I'll welcome you in. It's so good to be together again. When you're in pain, trouble, or doubt, let the love come in to let the hurting come out. Open your heart to share how you feel, and we'll build a fellowship that is real. Open the door, step right inside. Come into this place where love and hope will abide. Reach out your hand, I'll welcome you in. It's so good to be together again.
Amen. I love that song rendered by our buff musicians. It's good to have see all of you here. Apparently you all sprung ahead like you're supposed to. I know I'm glad because now my microwave clock reads the right time. So let's begin. These are my welcoming words. I want to extend a warm welcome to you today. Everyone is welcome here. This community is a safe place where we support each other in the sacred task of becoming, celebrate the transcending mystery of life, and rely on the transforming power of love. The buff theme for the month of March is Rebirth and Renewal. We also celebrate Women's History Month. Today, we are going to travel to the east and grapple with a famous haiku by the 17th century poet Basho. Sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes and the grass grows all by itself. Before I begin my opening words, I want to state that I am a lover of science. Science has opened new windows of awe and wonder for our species and has proved to be a very useful tool. I also need to add that the men in my Tuesday Talkers group are treasured friends. Most of you know that I am part of a group of men that meets every Tuesday to talk about whatever is on our minds. Mostly our talks revolve around politics and other such matters. We seldom talk about religion. Most of the men have consigned religion to the trash can of history as superstitious claptrap. All the men in the group are men of letters. Most have PhDs, and there are a couple of patent holders in the group. 4 of the men have made careers of teaching science and math at Notre Dame and IUSB. They are also adherents to the theory that people are essentially material beings, bags of meat, for which the only way of knowing is through the senses. I, on the other hand, take the point of view that the material world is a function of consciousness, and that there are ways of knowing that transcend the senses. Interestingly, some science backs my position. Last Tuesday, the discussion was on climate change. It was a session of lamentation. Everyone agreed that climate change was a real thing, that is a threat to our species and the flora and fauna of our planet. The consensus of the group was that there was too much denial to reverse or stop global warming. One of my friends said, "We need to learn to follow the science." I responded, "When I hear people say follow the science, I feel a bit grumpy. Science, as anyone can see, is a very valuable tool. To follow it, however, is like a carpenter saying, today, I'm going to follow my hammer. Or a mechanic saying, I'm going to follow my wrench. Or a truck driver saying, I wonder where my truck will take me today. Following the science is nonsense. The ovens at Auschwitz were designed by those who were following the science. Science is a great tool, but it is a very poor religion. I suggested that the real problem was not one of denial by the uninformed and naive, but denial by the sacred, by educated people like us. Having everyone's attention and after receiving a few guffaws, I further suggested that throwing themselves down at the altars of false gods of science will only make matters worse. My friends were a bit put off. I, however, pressed on. I think if you would spend some time getting in touch with reality, you might be more optimistic and more helpful at addressing climate change. The response was not positive, but one of the guys was able to spell it out. Okay, Mr. Smart, let's say Guy, how do we get in touch with reality? I said, I'm glad you asked that. I think to touch reality, one must spend some time in the company of one's nature self, or one's God self, or the Tao, or if you prefer, the really real. Call it what you want. The prescription in Zen is sitting quietly, doing nothing. Spring comes and the grass grows all by itself. This means that if we still our minds for a bit each day, that the really real will provide us through our creative imaginations, the spiritual mana, and the will to materially address these issues. For instance, my creative imagination is telling me that we have reason to be optimistic, telling me that we are of the earth and that as children of the earth, we already have within us ways to heal the current political and ecological threats. The real answers to climate change are spiritual answers that lie within our connections to ourselves, the universe, and each other. I like to imagine that we are God stuff. We need only to awaken to the fact that we created ourselves and our worlds. We can create a world where we and our planet return to wholeness. We just have to quiet our minds, make ourselves available to what is real, and let the voice of the spirit speak through our creative imaginations. And there I will end my story. After the service, we will have a circle talk. Please stick around. I think that circle talk is one of the most important parts of the day. And it is when we get a chance to hear from everyone who wishes to speak. It's how we get a chance to know each other. And now let's move to our announcements. But before we do, we have to take a quick survey. How many people here, just hold your hands up to the screen, enjoy having fun? How many people enjoy having fun? This could be a trap. Okay. How many people enjoy sweet things? Hold your hands up. People who enjoy sweet things. Okay, well, you guys are in luck because on Wednesday and Thursday evenings at 6 o'clock, we are the board, the Buff board and Joanne Critic are putting on 1 hour long surveys, I suppose, to investigate where our sweet spot is in Buff. So if you want to find out where the sweet spot is in Buff, either Wednesday or Thursday evening, the link is in your announcements. Are there other announcements that we should be made aware of? Catherine?
Yes, I hope all the kids will join us today at 11:30. There's another link in the announcement that was sent out yesterday to join on, and we'll be starting our new curriculum, the Builders Challenge, where we'll be creating our own towns and learning about social issues.
Very cool.
All the kids can join.
Thank you, Catherine. And if you're an adult, you can join if it sounds interesting, right? I assume. Okay, I'm getting a head nod from Dane. Okay, excellent. Other announcements? If there are no other announcements.
I have an announcement.
Yes, go ahead, Nancy.
I just wanted to mention that we need volunteers for the soup kitchen on April 3rd, Saturday before Easter. There's money to cover all of the expenses, and other people have had experience that would be glad to help somebody with it if they would like to know how to do it. But anyway, I hope somebody will step forward and think about feeding the hungry on Saturday, April 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. We need about 4 or 5 people, or half a dozen people would be about right.
That's about right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Nancy.
Yeah.
Other announcements? Yes.
Joanne, I have something.
Yes, Joanne.
First, just to clarify, and thank you for the great introduction to the sweet spot exercise. It's at 6:30, and it's going to go from 6:30 to 7:30, Wednesday and Thursday. And speaking of volunteers, we need volunteers for our stewardship team to make sure Buff stays financially secure into the future. And we are meeting Monday night at 6:30. I would love to have creative minds come and join our meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. Others? If not, Katharine Lion will bring us our social justice moment for the month.
Hi, okay. So as a part of the Social Justice Committee's commitment to bring racial justice regularly to our services and to lift up Black lives that have mattered to our country's evolution and attempt to learn our true history, I will talk today on the nonviolence movement, John Lewis and Jim Lawson. The nonviolence movement was the critical structure of John Lewis's entire life and the driving force of the civil rights movement from 1942 to 1968. Lewis was a part of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and learned about nonviolence from his mentor, Jim Lawson, a leading theoretician and tactician of nonviolence within the civil rights movement. Lawson taught the students about Reinhold Niebuhr and his philosophy of nonviolent revolution, ancient thinkers like Mao Tse and Lao Tzu, and they read Thoreau and discussed and debated every aspect of Gandhi's principles like concept of ahimsa, the Hindu idea of nonviolent passive resistance, and Sutahagruhu, I murdered that one, literally steadfastness and truth, and active pacifism. And they learned about the Christian idea of redemptive suffering. I'll read you what Lewis writes about the foundation of nonviolence, and I think this will speak to its beauty and power and importance no matter what time we are living in, and I think it answers the questions of what world do we want to create. Suffering puts us and those around us in touch with our consciousness. It opens and touches our hearts. It makes us feel compassion where we need to and guilt if we must. Suffering, though, can be nothing more than a sad and sorry thing without the presence on part of the sufferer of a graceful heart, an accepting and open heart, a heart that holds no malice towards the inflictors of his or her suffering. This is a difficult concept to understand, and it is even more difficult to internalize, but it has everything to do with the way of nonviolence. We're talking about love here. Not romantic love, not the love of one individual for another, not loving something that is lovely to you. This is a broader, deeper, all more encompassing love. It is a love that accepts and embraces the hateful and the hurtful. It is a love that recognizes the spark of divine in each of us, even in those who would raise their hand against us, those we might call our enemy. This sense of love realizes that emotions of the moment and constantly shifting circumstances can cloud that divine spark. Pain, ugliness, and fear can cover it over, turning a person toward anger and hate. It is the ability to see through these layers of ugliness, to see further into a person than that perhaps that person can see into himself, that is essential to the practice of nonviolence. If you can see this full-grown attacker who faces you as the pure, innocent child that he or she once was, that we all once were, it is not hard to find compassion in your heart. It is not hard to find forgiveness. And this, Jim Lawson taught us, is the essence of the nonviolent way of life, the capacity to forgive. When you can truly understand and feel, even as a person is cursing you to your face, even as she is spitting on you or pushing a lit cigarette into your neck or beating you with a truncheon, if you can understand and feel, even in the midst of those critical and often physically painful moments, that your attacker is as much of a victim as you are, that he is a victim of the forces that have shaped and fed his anger and fury, then you are well on your way to the nonviolent life. And it is a way of life. This is something Lawson stressed over and over again, that this is not simply a technique or a tactic or a strategy or a tool to be pulled out when needed. It's not something you turn on or off like a faucet. This sense of love, this sense of peace, this capacity for compassion is something that you carry inside of yourself every waking minute of the day. It shapes your response to a curt cashier in the grocery store or to a driver cutting you off in traffic, just as surely as it keeps you from striking back at a state trooper who might be kicking you in the ribs because you dared to march and protest against an oppressive government. If you want to create an open society, your means of doing so must be consistent with the society that you want to create. Means and ends are absolutely inseparable. Violence begets violence, hatred begets hatred, anger begets anger, every minute of the day, in the smallest moments as well as the largest. The all-encompassing love is like spring. It will come around, and a graceful heart will grow, just like the grass, if you acknowledge it.
Thank you, Catherine, and amen to that. And now, our opening hymn.
My blood doth rise in the roots of yon oak. Her sap doth run in my veins. Boundless my soul like the open sky, where the stars forever had reigned. Where the stars forever had reigned. My hands hold the weavings of time without end. My sight as deep as the sea. Beating my heart sounds the measures of old, that of love's eternity. That of love, that of love's eternity. I feel the tides as they answer the moon, washing on the far distant sand. Winging my song is the wind of my breast, and my love blows over the land. And my love, and my love, and my love blows over the land. My foot carries days of the old into new. Our dreaming shows us the way. Wondrous our faith settles deep in the earth, rising green to bring a new day. Rising green to bring a new day.
Excellent, thank you. Great way to begin the music part of our service. Now, Kevin Barrera will light, I'll read the lighting words for our chalice, and Lisa Fuller will actually light the chalice. So keep your screen on grid if you can, and so you can see both squares as Kevin reads and Lisa lights.
As we witness the buds of spring emerge from their winter dormancy, may we reflect upon the resilience, persistence, and sublime nature of life on this planet, pulsing with its ebb and flow over the countless seasons. And may this absolute truth ignite the chalice in our hearts, so that we may lead creatively inspired, compassionate lives towards all fellow humans and life on this world and beyond.
Amen. Thank you, Kevin. And thank you, Lisa. And now let's read our affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
When Spring Comes by Kevin Henkes, illustrated by Laura John Zeck. Before spring comes, The trees look like black sticks against the sky. But if you wait, spring will bring leaves and blossoms. If you wait, spring will make the leftover mounds of snow smaller and smaller and smaller until suddenly they're gone. Before spring comes, the grass is brown. But if you wait, spring will turn it green and add little flowers. If you wait, an egg will become a bird. A seed will start growing. Spring comes with sun, and it comes with rain, and more rain, and more rain. Do you like mud? Do you like puddles? I hope you like umbrellas. Before spring comes, the garden is just dirt and empty. But if you wait, spring will push green shoots through the dirt to fill up the garden. And spring will call out the pussy willows and new kittens too. Spring can come quickly or slowly. It changes its mind a lot. But when spring is finally here to stay, you will know it. There will be buds and bees and boots and bubbles. There will be worms and wings and wind and wheels. You will feel it. You will smell it. You will hear it. When spring is finally here to stay, you might think you are done waiting, but you are not. Now you have to wait for summer. The end.
Thank you, Catherine, for choosing that reading that story for all ages for us. And now let us read our, when they appear on the screen, our offering words. This fellowship is the community of ourselves. Its resources are our resources. Its wealth is what we share. As we contribute to the life of this community, we affirm our lives within it. And thank you, everyone, for your generosity. And now, June Blackwell will have a Bible reading for us from the Song of Solomon. June.
Yes. When Jim first asked me to do, am I unmuted? Yeah.
No, you're
Okay.
good. We can hear you.
I'm okay. When Jim McConnell first asked me to do this, I hesitated as usual. But then the theme for today's service, spring comes and the grass grows all by itself, triggered some fond memories of my time, 27 years living in the Detroit area, where spring was recognized as having arrived with the first broadcast of the first spring training game of the Detroit Tigers. Ernie Harwell was a well-beloved, well-known sportscaster who was the sportscaster for the Detroit Tigers for 42 out of his 55 years of broadcasting. Ernie is a fascinating person, and it deserves a more talk about himself than I'm going to give him today. But you should know that he was a baseball fan from a very early age, becoming a bat boy for a AA team in Atlanta at the age of 5. Never had to buy another ticket for a baseball game the rest of his life. Graduated from Emory University, went on to become after a couple of years of working in journalism, went on to become an announcer for the team he'd been a bat boy for, and was lured away by Branch Rickey to come as sportscaster to the Brooklyn Dodgers. And Branch Rickey traded a catcher in order to get Ernie Harwell's contract. That's how much he wanted him. It's the only time that it's known that a ball player got traded for an announcer. He ended up coming to the Detroit Tigers in 1960. and and lived the rest of his life in the Detroit area, and was very beloved, as well as was his wife, Lulu. So his reading to open spring every year was something that was greatly valued by the Detroit area people, whether they were avid baseball fans or not. This is what he read from the Song of Solomon. For behold, the winter is past. The rain is over and gone. The flowers appear on the earth. The time of singing has come, and the voice of the turtle dove is heard in the land. Thank you.
Thank you, June. That was very lovely. Very old, maybe 2,500, 3,000 years old. Now let's turn to our special music written and performed by Ralph Habutsky. Ralph, take it away.
Sparrows chirping in the wilderness, democracy dying in the darkness, the dance of dark money whistling out in the wings, calling all the children of destiny, raise the roof, what it means to break free. I hear the rattling of the chains, there's no more time to waste. Suppose, if we thought for more than a minute, suppose, things just might look a bit different. Dead letter secrets dangling in the air, paper tigers in the public square. I'd be lying if I told you that I really wasn't scared. My country, 'tis of thee, oh sweet land of poverty. Only an ember can break through the fog of apathy. Suppose, if we thought for more than a minute, suppose, things might look a bit different. We can't turn the clock back, not even the tide. When the water comes rushing in, it can't be denied. We've come too far to turn back now. We've come too far just to turn back now. We've come too far just to turn back now. We've come too far because they don't know what we now know. The media mummies say that it's always been that way. Pay no heed to whatever they say, or you'll find yourself stranded on the learned helplessness highway. So if you've listened this far and you're still keeping score, the next time they say it's been done this way before, aim your shooting star at the dark heart of 1984. Well, suppose, if we thought for more than a minute, suppose, things might look a little different. We've come too far to turn back now. We've come too far to turn back now. They don't know all the things now that we now know. We've come too far now to turn back now. I've come too far just to turn back now. We've come too
And man, thank you, Ralph, for that original song and lyrics. Very, very nice. And continuing with creative and original, Nico Rojas is reflecting today for us on sitting quietly, spring comes and the grass grows all by itself. Nico.
Hello everyone, my name is Nico. I've been asked to reflect on the haiku, sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes and the grass grows all by itself. I was invited to share what it means to me, sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes and the grass grows all by itself. What image does it bring to my mind? Sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes and the grass grows all by itself. Bernie in mittens is a beautiful image that I believe illustrates that haiku perfectly. Thank you for listening. I don't even need to say or do anything else. But okay, here's another take. First, sitting quietly is something that comes easily to me. I'm shy, introverted, and find it hard to speak out loud. Quite often, I'll withhold an idea or thought just because I don't trust I'll be able to put it in words in a conversation, or will they understand what I'm trying to say? First, sitting quietly. Easy. So far, so good. Second, doing nothing. Seems like it should be easy as well, but I've learned that doing nothing is sometimes extremely hard, so I'll come back to this. Third, spring comes. Actually, where I come from, there are no seasons, so actually spring never comes. And maybe that is why I have a problem with this phrase. But I get it, spring is the time of renewal, bird, all those things. Fourth, and the grass grows all by itself. Why grass? There are so many things that could grow by themselves, like hair, or better, a plant that you could actually eat. That would be way more rewarding. Why am I always thinking about food? But maybe grass isn't meant to be a reward. Personally, I'd rather grass not grow at all. Maybe that's why I have a problem with this phrase. Maybe the grass growing is the punishment for sitting still, quiet, and doing nothing. But I do think that and the grass grows all by itself is meant to be a positive outcome to all the sitting quietly, doing nothing. I understand this to be an optimistic phrase, like don't worry, things will be alright, this too shall pass, but will it? And how is sitting quietly doing nothing going to help? I can spend all day sitting quietly in my computer, but if I were to do nothing, I would probably lose my job. I think too, of all the problems that demand from us, the opposite of sitting quietly and doing nothing. Social and economical inequality, racial and environmental injustice. Sitting quietly, doing nothing sounds like privilege. There are so many things that we do need to worry about and that require us to speak up and do something. But what? How is doing nothing hard? How do you do nothing? How do you do nothing? How do you do nothing? If you cannot do nothing, then at least try that there's something that you do isn't causing any harm. Doing nothing is so hard, and so is sitting quietly. I'd rather be running or laying down. Horizontal is the best way to be, and sleeping. Also, I can't even stay quiet. Images come in abundance to my mind, sometimes all at once, like noise and ideas. The creativity happens when I'm able to slow the stream, pick a frequency, a frame, cut out stuff, be selective. There's something valuable here. Just have to find it. Shoot! I should have saved the Bernie mittens for the spirituality of memes service. Okay, slow down. Cut the grass. Forget the spring. Start over. Just the basics. Please join me sitting quietly.
And thank you, Nico. That was quite unique, quite lovely. And now for something else, musically speaking, from Jim Douglas, one of my favorite pieces that he does. Also an original by Jim. Excellent. Thank you, Jim. Also, a thank you to those who provided the images for that piece of music. I think I saw Karen and Gretchen had done that for us. And continuing with original and creative, Clark Gilpin will now speak to us on his interpretation. Clark, you are muted.
Now
Clark,
in the summer of 1843, when she was in her early 30s, Margaret Fuller decided to join the painters, Sarah Freeman Clark, and Sarah's brother, the Unitarian minister and theologian James Freeman Clark, on an extended trip west from her home in Massachusetts. Fuller was struggling financially after the early death of her father, but she was also becoming well known across Massachusetts as a gifted teacher, advocate of women's education, and transcendentalist writer. Her friends included the Alcott family and Ralph Waldo Emerson. This summer-long trip west gave her respite from teaching and a chance to collect her thoughts about the meaning and course of her life. She and her companions began their journey at Niagara Falls and traveled by boat through the Great Lakes, finally crossing Lake Michigan from Michigan to Chicago and spending several weeks on the Illinois prairie before returning home. So, what did Margaret learn? Many things, but let me emphasize one. She concluded that our first impressions are superficial and misleading because we enter unfamiliar spaces with too many preconceptions, and these preconceptions prevent us from truly experiencing where we are and who we are. Arriving in Illinois, Fuller writes, At first, the prairie seemed to speak of the very desolation of dullness. After sweeping over the vast monotony of the lakes, to come to this monotony of land with all around a limitless horizon. Oh, it was too dreary. Traveling across the lake and prairie, Fuller gradually opened to the beauty of what she saw. And she recorded in her journal that it was only after a daily and careless familiarity that I entered into its beauty. For nature always refuses to be seen by being stared at. After Fuller journeyed across the prairie, through the wildflowers, and had seen the sunset with that calmness seen only on the prairies, I began to love because I began to know the scene and shrank no longer from the encircling vastness. It is always thus with the new form of life. We must learn to look at it by its own standard. Fuller took her model for this respectful connection to the land from her encounters with the indigenous people whose historic territories surrounded Lake Michigan. Their cultures, she thought, infused the very earth itself. The ground above and below is full of their traces, she wrote. You have only to turn up the sod to find arrowheads and Indian pottery. Seeing the traces of the Indians who chose the most beautiful sites for their dwelling and whose habits do not break in on that aspect of nature under which they were born. We feel as if they were the rightful lords of a beauty they refused to deform. By contrast, the newly immigrating settlers were largely unable to see any of this natural beauty. It speaks in vain to those who are rushing into its sphere. In her journeys, Fuller's life gradually inhabited a new landscape, defined by what she described as limitless horizon and encircling vastness. The prairie vista became for Fuller a metaphor of life itself. Reacting to her contemporaries who claimed that barriers posed by towering mountains or steep river valleys evoked the sensation that, for us, that limits are the sacred. Fuller replied to the contrary, that the distant horizon of the prairie had taught her a very different lesson about the sacred. I say that what is limitless is alone divine.
Amen, Clark, and thank you very much for that. I might add that Clark is a bona fide historian, so love that chat by Clark. And now, for the Earth Forever Turning by our buff musicians. Man, and now our musical benediction. Kevin will read our chalice extinguishing, and Lisa will extinguish the chalice.
We extinguish the chalice here, that it might glow gently in our hearts. May it light your path as you leave this place. May it guide your way until we are all together again.
Amen. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Jim.